Testing, 1, 2, testing. I'm going to sit over here. I'm going to sit back there. On one side. We're about ready to start, everyone. I'm waiting for my cue. All right. Aloha, everyone. Welcome to Center for Spiritual Living, Kauai. Welcome to everyone online to this very, very amazing special event. And I'm going to ask everybody to put their eyes on me right now so I can talk. We are live. All right, so first things first, we always do a couple of little announcements, and the only announcements we have is, of course, Sunday, but there's a special meeting after service on Sunday, an update meeting for us as a membership community to update you on our lease and how we're going forward and all of that. So it'll be a short meeting, but it's going to happen right after service is over. Rob is going to turn the camera off, and then turn it back on again, and we're going to just start and get you out of here, but as fast as you can, as fast as we can. And then the only other thing, of course, is the telethon that we're so excited about. It's coming along. Melissa Mojo is doing an amazing job on putting it together. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's Saturday, starting at 10 a.m. and going all the way to 3:30. And if you go to the website, you'll see the schedule of the people that will be performing and singing and talking and all of that. And you'll see Steve Bakanoff there and me, and is there anybody else? And a week from Saturday, the 19th. And Marion and the Sacred Earth Choir. It's going to be an amazing, all local talent. So, and of course, we're raising money for Center for Spiritual Living Kauai to take us into our expansion. All right, so with all that said, let's get on with why we're here tonight, all right? So I think we need to turn the music off that I turned on. Can you, yeah, I didn't turn it off. Is it off? Thank you, all right. So I want to tell you, some of you, especially people online, you all probably know mostly about Patrick, but I had a little thing put together that I wrote about him. And so in case you don't know these things, you're going to know them now. So he has over 40 years experience, maybe more of that than that, as a solo performer, a coach, a teacher, and an educator. And he holds a degree in theater, education, criminal justice, and psychology. And he became a licensed practitioner and then a licensed minister for Centers for Spiritual Living. He completed his studies in 2011, and he was ordained as a minister in 2016. And his areas of service included youth ministry at the Global Truth Center in Los Angeles for over 5 years. And he also created and facilitated mental health and wellness workshops with his wife, Rita, for the California State Prison System while we lived in Los Angeles. Patrick founded the Center for Spiritual Living Kauai with his wife, Rita, in 2013. And he and Rita are responsible for the many workshops and programs facilitated here on Kauai. His passion, as many of you know, is his inner child work, and his original approach to this work can be experienced in the many workshops and spiritual counseling sessions he has created and facilitated. And now, in his book, A Tale of Two Fathers, which will be coming out after the first of the year, it's one boy's triumphant journey to the other side of mental illness. He reveals how his deep intuition led him through a turbulent and violent childhood to become an empowered individual, using those same intuitive tools that he gained then to empower others. So as we just get ready to put our seatbelts on, fasten our seats for the ride, I wanted to start with a quote by Dr. Joe Dispenza that I felt like really fit what's happening tonight. And Dr. Joe wrote, I've always said that when we can overcome the emotions that tether us to our past, and we can look back at our past from a greater level of consciousness, awareness, energy, or emotional state, we can then see the purposeful good in the painful or challenging events of our lives. From this vantage point, we can see from a place of love, compassion, and freedom why certain events in our lives had to happen the way they did. At the heart of this realization is the fact that if it were not for those past events, we would not know or feel the liberation and fullness that exists in the generous present moment. When we are free from the emotions of our past, that's the moment we can retire the past as wisdom. That's the moment we can truly begin to create a new future that's empowering. Yeah, it fits really good for tonight. So I'm going to let Patrick take the rest, but before he does, I would like to just take a moment, take a deep breath together. I can feel the beautiful love in the room from all of you. I know we hold the space in love because the one power and the one presence is all that there is, and it is a presence of divine love, divine goodness, divine intelligence, divine light, and divine wisdom. And I know that we are each living and breathing that intelligence and that wisdom and that love in this moment and in always. And I know that's what we bring here tonight as we gather, as we share, and as Patrick shares his truths and his wisdom and his light and his journey. And I know the evening is unfolding in the most perfect way for each and every one of us, that the message here given tonight is something that is a divine appointment that we've all chosen to show up for. So I know it can only be perfect, and that we as a group collectively gain much love and wisdom from this experience and give back that same love and wisdom. So I know it's good from beginning to end and then beyond. So I just allow that to be and give thanks for it as I release my word, as I let it go, as I let it be, as we affirm together. And so it is. So thank you. So here he is, Reverend Patrick Feren. Yay.
Aloha. Oh my. How y'all doing? Yeah. And I'm fantastic, actually. Yeah, today feels very different for me, to be quite honest with you. And I'm going to be with that. Because I've had these incredible emotions all day. This is 50 years in the making. I didn't even know I could be that old, but it is 50 years in the making. Everything that takes place tonight was before the age of 10, and so it's a sensitive. And I just want to let everyone know too, because I'd like to take care of you for a moment. I processed this. Everything that's happening tonight, every excerpt that I read, I've already processed. We think. And it has been a beautiful experience today because I sat here in this very space without all of you in here. And I could hear this part of me that said, you're going to be in big trouble tonight. You're in trouble. And you're in trouble because you're not supposed to air your dirty laundry. Ever. And I was never really good at not doing that anyway, by the way. Just so you'll know, my mother was always saying, oh, Patrick, even with everything that went on in our family, I never stopped talking. I know you guys have a hard time believing that, but I just kept talking and talking. But tonight it's from the child's perspective, which is just beautiful because we usually tell the stories. And when I first came here and before my mother passed away, the congregation, call it whatever, the community, went through that death with me. Every Sunday I would be something about my mother, and they all were ready for it. But I never mentioned my father, or I never mentioned my brother. And they became kind of a part of my life that I never really even dreamt about them, thought about them after it was all said and done. After you get out of the war zone, you just kind of move forward. And they came back and surfaced up, and I knew I had to write this book. Rita has been telling me for 20 years, please write this book. I have met a lot of people who have gone through many things with mental illness. And just so it's clear, tonight is not a night about, I can't wait to blame mom and dad for what went on. But I have to say that as I was sitting here also, I read these pages, and I'm so proud of that little boy. I'm so proud of him. Because he was exuberant even through it all. So tonight we're going to do a little talk and story. I want this to be inspirational, but I also want it to be authentic. I want it to be where I'm not trying to make sure that I take care of everyone. And it was interesting because I was looking up mental illness so that I could be politically correct. And so I'm going to have to do some work in that area on the chapters as I start to redo things like that. But here, this is something that is just wild. I said, well, what's politically correct? Because just so you'll know, in the day when I was little and we were dealing with my father, who you'll get to know a little bit more tonight, we didn't have Google. There was no Google to go, why is Dad acting like this? Why is he acting? We didn't have that. But it says the proper term is not mental illness, it's living with mental illness. And it says don't use afflicted by mental illness, suffers from mental illness, or is a victim of mental illness. And this was the aha that I got today. Would it be fair to say, and you might not know this right now, but I do, was it fair to say that I was afflicted by mental illness? That I suffered because of mental illness? Or is I was victimized, not a victim? And it's interesting because all these things that I'm not supposed to do, I actually went through. I was afflicted. I did suffer. My family did suffer from it. And yet we all, and interestingly enough, we all lived with it. So tonight, my intention is that we can all be a part of this. That you can all experience this and somewhere within yourself go, wow, oh yeah, yeah. So my father, I'm going to use father all night, but his name was Donovan. He was diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic, which, as I found out many years later, it's one of the most dangerous. Who knew? When I was growing up, he was just a drunk. He was just a rageaholic. He was just this, not politically correct, but that crazy man who lives in my house. And so tonight, I'm not going to walk on eggshells to try to be politically correct, because this is the night that this little boy gets to talk about and read some of the things that come from his heart. So if I don't say it, and this goes to all you beautiful people that I know are watching online, because you've all been writing me all day, and I appreciate all of the support and the just the support that I got today because I wrote a blog about it. I just wanted to know that this was a normal way of life for me. I didn't know during that time that this was something that I knew it was a secret, but it wasn't something that I had diagnosed and said, oh, he's a paranoid schizophrenic and this is the reason he's acting this way. No, it was just like, run. No, it wasn't. So, my dear dad, paranoid schizophrenic, but he had a lot of other things too. They say, you don't say paranoid schizophrenic anymore, by the way, you just say schizophrenia. And it kind of encompasses it all. Some of the things that my dad had was childhood trauma. You found out later. He was locked in a bird cage for many years of his younger days. And he was in the Army for 20 years, had PTSD. Didn't know that either. Was in the Korean World War II. And alcoholism. All of that in one package. But once again, tonight isn't about him necessarily. It's just about the little boy that went through that and how he did and how he used intuitiveness. And how great to be a minister now, because I know that there is that power that was always there with me, moving through me, that we call God, we call good, we call it whatever it is. But he was finally diagnosed in the 80s. I was probably in my 20s by the time he was, and spent the rest of his life in a veterans mental institute. So he was there for about 12 years. Going to see my father as a young boy, when he would have episodes, and what they called in those days, he's gone for a while. It wasn't unusual for me to be doing my homework and while he was locked up, as they call it then, and then visiting him. And then finally, it's very interesting when he would come, and I would never know, hey, Pop. And he had that catatonic look, but then you knew when he was back, because he would go, hey, Patrick, how are you? And I'd go, Mom, Dad's back. Dad's back. So, paranoid schizophrenia, the backdrop of my life was the 60s. We talked about it a little bit on Sundays, but I just want you to know I was on the cusp. And I'm not afraid to say it. We were the left alone. I love it. We were the left alone generation. As long as you weren't like your brother, then we don't really care what you do. So I was blessed because my circle of friends, we talked about how we felt. Oh my God, at such a young age to do that. Well, I discovered a lot of coping mechanisms during my childhood, and we'll talk a little bit. I developed this cleaning obsessive at the age of 8. I know, odd, right? I'm just wondering why they didn't think that was strange. The little boy was organizing all of the cupboards and alphabetizing all of the cans. I'm just saying. My mother would come home and say, oh, our house is just so clean. My boy, he comes home and that is spotless. My dad was not as happy because as his cigarette would go into the ashtray, I would wipe it in between smokes. And so when he put his cigarette back down, it would be wet. And he'd go, God damn it, stop cleaning. Rita wishes now that I still had that cleaning obsession. Because I miraculously, without therapy, completely let go of it. I also learned, as we're going to see in one of my stories tonight, is that I learned how to calm people down. I learned skills that you couldn't learn in school. I also had hypervigilance, which was not the most pleasant. I didn't know I had it. Once again, I didn't know I had it. I was just very alert. I slept with one eye open most of my childhood. Every creak, every crack, every noise, I was there. Boom. You couldn't even, I watched every move you made. If you twitched your eye, I knew you were twitching your eye. If your hand went down here. Now, when I first moved out on my own, and I was living with my fiance, life was really boring. Because I was so used to drama and doors opening and running for your life that this was boring. I didn't know people just like hung out and watched TV and didn't really do too much about these things. I also learned my humor, that some of you know. I learned it by entertaining my mom, by imitating a very, very sick man, my father. But if I could, by imitating him, she would laugh and loosen up. And my entire childhood was spent loving and protecting my mother. That was all. That was my, I had a few other fun times too. I want you to be very sure that my life wasn't just one straight drama. There was some breathing room. And then someone said, you're writing this book. What makes you an expert? And I said, I'll tell you what makes me an expert. I firsthand went through it. And I dealt with mental illness firsthand, and I knew how to work it And you're going to see through these wonderful stories tonight. At least I think they're wonderful. And if the author doesn't think they're wonderful, then there's no point in even writing them, by the way. And so what tonight's about for me is reading these stories, and I was going to have a question and answer at the end, but that didn't seem right. We're going to read the story. I'm going to read it, and we're going to get involved in the story. And because I have a theatrical background, they won't just be read, but they're going to be felt. And so that's what I'm knowing about tonight, is that we're going to take a journey with this little boy that is just, that I said to myself today, sitting here, I said, do you know how proud I am of you? And I knew that this would be life-changing, this adventure of this book, because I thought I was very evolved, and I am, but there's a part of me that's been still needing to let go. And so I just want to thank you for showing up for my coming out party. And I thought I had dealt with this, and I have, but tonight, I do have a little funny story that's beautiful before we begin. My dad, paranoid schizophrenic thinks that everyone's against them, and the FBI, and I went through many cross-country trips with my family with no air conditioner, by the way, with my dad, say, pull over the car, get underneath the car, the FBI is here, taking the neighbors next door, taking the eggs and throwing them over into their house as grenades. And then I became a mediator, because then I had to go and explain at 7 and 8 years old why my father was egging the houses in the neighborhood. And I laughed. This is one thing, I'm so glad, Maureen, that you did, because after the fear was gone, there was something hysterical about your dad, yanking him over there, and the neighbors are coming up to me, Patrick, could you talk to your father? I said, and my dad goes, yeah, I took care of them, and it was very PTSD combined with every other mental illness, and my heart went out, but at that time it didn't go out because I was surviving. We didn't want to get kicked out of the neighborhood because my dad's blowing up the houses with eggs. And then it took away all my fun, because when I TP'd and I did the egging, it wasn't even a big deal anymore. My dad had done it all. And then my last one with my dad, I'm glad we're getting a little laugh with him, because he used to say to my mom, Katie, you love money. And she would say, yes, I do, because we don't have any. And then he would say, as he got older and as he went into the mental institute, he would always say to me, do you need some money? And I would always say, yes. I don't think there was ever a time in my life when I just said, no, I didn't need money. And he would do this. I love you, Dad. And he would blink it like I Dream of Jeannie. Remember what she go? And then he would go, and then he'd go, check the trunk of your car when you guys leave. No? And then I go, so this was the beautiful part. You walk to the car, and my mom and I would look at each other, and we'd go, And she goes, I want to know who really is the crazy one in this bunch, because we're wanting to open up the trunk to see if he's blinked the money into the car, So, of course, right? So, thank you again. You can unfasten your seatbelts. But I picked 3 stories out of many, many, many. And I picked them because I wanted you to realize the title, which is, The Tale of Two Fathers. And that's because there was a lot of times there was other people that were there, present. And it was so clear. It was so clear to watch and look at someone and see that they weren't there. So, get a little water here. Isn't this like fireside chat kind of thing? My mother worked full time, and when my father was out of work, which was a lot of the time, he would be there when I got home from school. I was never certain what state of mind my father would be in, or what state of mind he would be out of. I remember this one particular day when I was 7 years old that would stand out in my mind for the rest of my life. This day felt different than the preceding ones. As I walked around the corner to the street that led to my house, that rush of uncertainty filled my body. My stomach tightened, my palms began to sweat, and my imagination ran wild with the dreadful anticipation of what might lie ahead. The hair stood straight up on the back of my neck. Everything screamed, danger, danger. It was not the first time that I felt that fear of danger, and I was hoping it was just my imagination, so I continued. My hypervigilance, better known as spidey senses, went into full gear and my protective shield went up. I kept walking toward the house in spite of everything inside of me screaming, "Go the other direction." Now my heart was beating out of my chest as I climbed up the small set of stairs leading to my front door. With shaking hands, I put my key into the lock. Opening the door slowly, I called out, "Dad? Are you here?" The silence echoed off the walls. My voice quivered as I called out again, "Dad, are you here?" Slowly and cautiously, I walked through the door into the blackened room. The curtains were all pulled shut, and there was only a thin crack of afternoon light peeking through the drapes. That thin light revealed my father, sitting in a chair, his back to me. He was so silent and so still. For a moment, I wondered perhaps that he had passed out, as he sometimes did. And that would be such a relief. With my sights on him and the door behind me, I walked toward the chair, slowly and quietly as I could. I bumped into the table, and he slowly turned toward me, and by now I was a mass of goosebumps. Yes, I was terrified, but frozen where I stood. He looked straight at me. He looked like my father, and yet his entire essence was something else. With tears of fear in my eyes, I mumbled, "Dad, are you okay? What's wrong, Dad?" He just kept staring at me. "You're scaring me, Dad." I began to cry. "You're scaring me. Please say something." I was begging him by now. He stared right through me like he was hypnotized. I was paralyzed, staring back at a man who was definitely not my father. I was planning my escape. The door wasn't that far away, and I could surely beat him to the door. I began to back away, and he was struggling to speak to me. In a slowed, slurred speech, he screamed out, "Get out! Please get out! Run, Patrick, run! They want me to hurt you. They want me to do bad things to you." His voice got louder, urgent, and somewhat desperate. "Get out! They want me to hurt you!" As I backed away, I screamed out, "Okay, Dad. Okay, Dad, I'm going." With tears in my eyes, I ran out from the darkness into that late afternoon sunlight. As if a saber-toothed tiger was chasing me, I ran for my life. Never looking back, breathing, sweating, crying, I reached the familiar telephone booth at Rose and Mike's liquor store on San Pablo Avenue. I had a pocket full of dimes that I remembered having just for these occasions. And I called my mom at work. I still remember the number to this day, 653-2933, 653-2933, 653-2933. She was my ticket to safety. If she couldn't pick me up, I'd go to my Nana's, who lived quite a bit further. Either way, I was safe now. Years later, I would come to understand that all the terror that took place on that afternoon had a different meaning and message. I realized long into manhood that unconditional love broke through the demons of the tormented mind of my father and pointed a young boy of the age of 7 to safety. I choose to believe that somewhere that man that I call my father came up and out long enough to save me from the many voices and personalities that lived within him. I do believe that love is more powerful than the darkness of living with mental illness. Thank you. Yeah. One of the things that I just love looking at you right now. It's just beautiful. You're just right in the heart. I told Rita, I said, I went through this, and writing it was one thing, and then when I read it out loud, I couldn't believe that I had such emotion, almost the tears, and just, it was almost like I couldn't believe how scared that little boy must have been. But look at the realization, too, that little boy had about this. And I really believe this last part. I mean, like I said, everything's in snapshots because it's out of a manuscript type thing. But, yeah. So this is a time for us for a moment, it's not feedback on, how well I wrote it or any of that stuff. It's just what came up maybe. Any questions for me? I know that this is the first time. What I love about this is the first time out. And go ahead, Claudia.
When did you come to the
Hold on.
insight?
Yeah. Right now, it's okay. It's okay. He does it for the camera.
Okay, so what age did you come to the insight regarding the love and light in him for you was able to go beyond?
Good question.
What
Good
do
question.
you recall?
Yeah, I remember it twice. I remember it as a young boy, thinking to myself, there must be more to this man than what I'm seeing. Some of the background on this too, I just want to, could you just flip this over? I'm glad you asked because it reminded me of something I drew this when I was very young. For the people that cannot, if you can't see it back there, when I was really little, they asked me to do the family unit. And then when I was in 18, and which answers your second question about in my 18, 19, 20, I started to go, there was more realization to unconditional love. And then as I grew up, even more it did. But my first one was as a child. But I remember even showing this to my mom, because this is me on the bottom, holding up my mom, who was holding up my brother and my father. So I remember showing her this, because they asked me in school to draw my family unit. And you can see that I drew it with such pride. I was not a very good artist, but I will tell you, and this isn't the same one, but it looked very similar because I still have the same artist skills. But my mom looked at this and she said, "Is that the way you feel about?" And I said, "Yeah, I just feel like I lift you and then you take care of the other two, because my brother was having a lot of problems as well." He did not look at to answer this one too. My brother Danny looked at my dad as something very like, that's my dad, and he couldn't understand why we felt the way we did. But there was something always in my father that I could see past, and I still ask that question today. I still ask that question today. How did that little boy know that? Because I used to sit on the side of the bed with my mom and counsel her about him. And I would tell her that there's more to him. He's doing this because he's this and that and this and that. And I look back now, and I'm all over the place with this, but I look back now and I can just see my whole family rolling. You know, I still have that in my head going, they're gonna be upset now. But what I really was, in many respects, was I acted as my father's wife and my mother's husband, without some of the stuff that goes with matrimony stuff. But I had to be really honest about that. That's how I knew at such a young age. But now what we know now about just spirit, you know, I ask that in a question to myself. A lot of me as a child thought I came here for just that reason, just to help my mom and the people get through what they had to get through. Whether or not if that is true or not, it really doesn't matter because I did get through. Anyone else? Yes, Steve? Thank you, Claudia.
So that this idea about you were there to help your mom, you realize that now, but when you were really young, did you have that? You actually knew that was your role, that you had come for that, or something. And what did you think about why you took this on? Did you have any?
That's a beautiful, because I immediately had a hit on it. As I got older, I realized the opposite. As I got older, and I had my moment of how did that ever happen to me? As I got older, I realized that was not normal behavior, that there was no way that should have been my role. I got that. But as a little boy, I thought that was my role. As a little boy, I thought that was my role. Because why? Because I was good at it. I don't know how and why I was good at it, but it wasn't Steve, which is great. Stream, sorry. It wasn't until later that I realized that was not normal. As a little boy, I knew for an absolute fact that I was here to make sure my mom got through the husband she married. Then when I got older, I went, I don't think so. So yeah, it was an interesting thing. I think I always, and I have a story that's coming up with that addresses that, I think I always felt that it was my role. And if you're feeling emotion from me tonight, which I would imagine you are, it's because I don't have regrets, but no little boy should go through that. And I love my mom, and I love that, and there's a chapter about her too, before you even ask. So where was your mother? I would imagine it's been said before to me. So where was your mother? And there's a whole chapter on, I'll tell you where she was. And I think my mother thought it was normal as well. I was they called me the little man. They would have people in the house, and I would go, you look just absolutely lovely tonight. And these women would be like, that's kind of creepy. But they were like all flattered and everything. They go, my mom goes, yeah, he's like a little man, isn't he? But to me, I was rewarded for being that. Thank you, Stream, because yes.
I knew that you were a Catholic, and that you were a sacristan. The altar boy.
Oh yeah,
sacristan.
altar boy.
Yeah. So was the time during that time, or were you older? I was and I guess the question is, how did it affect you in terms of how you believed that was normal? Was that related to anything that you learned within the Catholic system?
I think what I learned through the Catholic experience, because everyone knows I said I'm a discovering Catholic, not a recovering. And what I think I learned was my faith was there. If I can remember anything, I remember that the worst of the times with my father, I knew that there was some kind of power that was bigger than what was going on here that I had to depend on, or we'd never get out of it. So I don't think anything in my thing that said you have to take care of your mother. I still find that it was, because we're just unplugged here, I still find it was very, my sleepovers consisted of finding a phone and sneak to it so I could call my mother and then not be made fun of, by my friends, because you're supposed to go have fun at a sleepover. But I was worried sick the entire time because I'm thinking, what if he hurts her? So I don't remember a time that it didn't seem normal at that time. But no, I don't think the Catholic, but they did get, but that faith of something, saints and things out there gave me the strength, I think, sometimes to get through it. Anyone else before we move on to another wondrous experience? Louise? Thank you guys. This feels wonderful having you here. Thank you. It's like being in your living room. Thank you all for watching as well. Louise?
Yeah, Patrick, being faced with your father's constant, behavior and you being faced with that, did you ever at times like play it out yourself, act that way because you were hit so often with it, but maybe on your own time, like the behavior affected you so much that you played out that behavior yourself even though that wasn't you?
When I got older or?
At any time.
I'm catapulting to adulthood a little bit because there really wasn't a luxury to play out anything, during that time period that we're talking about from remembrance to probably, 12 or 13. But yeah, I think later on I saw behavior, but not behavior like to hurt anybody or anything like that. But I remember later on thinking, as I was older and he was still around, I was thinking, an extra glass of wine would sure be okay right now to deal with him. Because if you can't beat him, join him. And so I think a little of that did, but I didn't get past that. Yeah, I think, yes, Beth. Beth. Yeah, thank you.
Did you have a resilient adult that you connected with, friend, family, teacher?
You see, it was a secret. So I couldn't really trust that. And just you asking that, Beth, it kind of hit a part of me, and it kind of makes you, it makes me wonder, I always wondered why I didn't have a role model, a mentor. I didn't have it. And I don't know why. I think I've looked for it all through even my adulthood. I'm looking for somebody that I can look up to, but no. I might have watched. You know who was my strong role model was my mom. Until I realized later on, every woman I chose had to be like my mom because she was strong. And if a woman told me she didn't have a job, she was gone. I left. Because I watched my mother working, the only one working and doing all of that. So it's interesting that I'm learning, but that's what I love about the questions. It's making me reflect upon myself and to see now, no. But my resilience was there. And I think, and I hate to say it, or I love to say it, my resilience came from a power that I knew was there. Now, I was scared too, but I'm saying I knew there was something. I remember sneaking over to Salesian High School boys' school where my dad and my brother went. And there was a grotto where like St. Bernadette, I don't know if where she was, and I remember going in there and sneaking in. Other people are sneaking into, I don't know, ice cream places. I'm sneaking into grottos. And I'm sitting in there going, and I just knew that something was going to appear to me that would help me to understand. So my mentor, if anything at that time, was probably God. But, You're right, though. The one thing is I thought, well, because I made an agreement that if my mother wasn't hurt, I would become a priest. You know all those agreements you made. Okay, I got to deal with you. We'll negotiate. So, yeah. Thank you. It's interesting. Yeah. Hello, Roseanne.
I just want to say that you sharing your story may have triggered other people to recall some of their stories. And as you already know, some of my story is that I, in a similar way, I had a mentally ill father, but not maybe as extreme as what you went through. But as the youngest of 3 children, I remember being 4 years old and learning that I had a power to stop the violence, the situation in the family by just asking, begging, or saying, can't you just stop? Or, and once in a while, not all the time, but once in a while, the mood would shift and he would stop.
Yeah.
And so that power that a young child learns to feel is maybe familiar to many that are sitting here or watching online. And thank you for sharing your story.
You are so welcome. Yeah, I was thinking of this, by the way, of the live stream. I wrote a blog about this today, but just, brief little blog, and they said they wanted to know why I was doing this live stream. And this right here feels now comfortable in our living room. But then I also know, because that little inner child in me is saying, did you know that people you don't know might even be watching you right now? And so the little part of me, I just got it, that's why I'm sharing it, was thinking, oh my God, somebody I don't know is going to judge me. And then the other part of me is saying, yes, it's very worth it because of what you just said. That's what triggered it.
You have one more.
One more.
Why did your mom end up with your dad?
I bet she asked herself that most of her life. It's very good. Let's address her for just a moment, because I want to address because I have my mother was very honest with me. I love you, Mom, but probably a little too honest to be telling your 7-year-old, 8-year-old boy, always with respect, but really told me. And a lot of hers, because it's asked all the time, how could your mother have stayed with him all through those years and put their children through it? And she came from that part of her that you couldn't leave no matter what. And so how did she met him when he was in the Army, but I don't think she ever really wanted to be with him. She went to the Army. She wanted to get out. I'm just going to get it all out there. My cousins are watching. She probably wanted to get out of Kansas City. And in those days, the Army was one of the ways to do that. You could get out. And you met someone, and they do. So was that the question, is why was she with him? Was that? Yeah. I think she asked herself all the way till the day that I think she passed away, because I don't think she understood why she stayed with him all those years, even towards the end, by the way, when he was still in the mental institute and she was separated from him legally. She still was there every Sunday, visiting him, bringing him his cigarettes, doing this thing. And we asked that question. What was that? So that's about all I know. I mean, I know reasons why, but mostly, as we were talking about, women had a different, I remember the one time that she went to divorce my father, and we went down to the courtroom. These things are just popping up. And I was so happy. I said, I'm going to get my childhood. I'm going to get this time in my life. And she went right in, and my brother's begging, don't do it, Mom, please. And I go, Mom, do it. Now, go for it. My brother was 7 years older, by the way. And she walked in, and I can remember her walking out and saying, I can't do it. And I have a feeling it had nothing to do with because she was so in love with him. I think that she was a caretaker. And she wanted to take care of him. For whatever her psychological reasons were too. Yeah. You ready to dive in a little deeper? I've organized them really well. There's only 3, so we can all like breathe through this. And thank you for your questions. And I can feel, just so you'll know, I can feel your love so strong right now. I can also feel that you're looking within yourselves, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. We can never, the truth, I was saying, I said, I'm not airing dirty laundry, I'm airing truth. And if we had all spent more time not trying to hide and not trying to not tell the secret, because it has no power once you tell it. That's what I learned as a little boy. Once you tell it, when my friends would come over and they'd have to step over my dad. They go, hi, and they go, your dad's on the floor. And I would go, yeah. My mom would go, why do you bring home your friends? And I remember when I was about 11 or 10 or 11, I said, my attitude was, if you're going to have him here, I'm going on with my childhood. That's a little, when I'm looking back, that's not a real normal, like 9-year-old, 10-year-old, or maybe it was me. So the first one we went to was, I named the snapshots. After School Special was the one you just, and then we have The Great Protector. I have to have a little drink of water for this one. Let's go. Just think this is a whole book. Can you imagine? I was 7 years old when I took on the role of the Great Appeaser, or I like to think of myself as the Great Protector. My mom called me the little man of the house. It felt good to be her little man, to be the protector of my family, because my family definitely needed a lot of protecting. It was like a siren in the night, a voice screaming my mom's name. Katie, 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 where the hell are you? Get your ass in here. That was my cue. I was on call anytime I heard my dad's voice screaming like that. It was a part of those violent rages that came when he was drunk. He was 6'4", and I was no match to him physically, but strangely enough, there were other ways to fight the giant. Intuitively, I found those ways through trial and error. Little Patrick, had a calming effect on my dad, and I began to use this power. Not only did I cultivate this superpower, but I perfected it as the years went on. At 7 years old and beyond, I could actually stop my dad from raging. I had a way. As I look back on it, it was a form of manipulation, and it assisted me in protecting my mom. It was my one goal in my life to stop my dad from hurting my mom. What if something happened to her? If he killed her? And sometimes it looked like he certainly wanted to. What would happen to me? What would happen to my brother? I could not let that happen, no matter what I had to do. So on many occasions, I heard that cry from the bedroom. Yes, it was my cue to do my job. I was the one who could calm him down. My mom would say, can you appease your father? I always obliged. The room was dark, and that familiar stale smell of alcohol permeated the air. There he would be, sprawled out on the bed in his undershorts and t-shirt. Dad? Dad? I spoke in a calm, quiet voice, while at the same time taking a reading on the state of mind before I moved any closer to the bed. My intuitive powers were so strong. Had he passed out? I wasn't sure as I crept toward that huge figure in the dark. I did not turn on the lights because I didn't want to take a chance of waking him up fully. My mission was to get him to fall asleep. You see, my dad had a habit of passing out after the alcohol and rage wore him down a bit. We all looked forward to those golden moments. The family could breathe and even relax if relaxing was even possible in our household. As I stood there in the dark, I could tell he was definitely in that state where I knew he couldn't get up to hurt me. I crawled into the bed and began my way of soothing him to sleep. The smell of liquor was hot on my face. He knew it was me, and he began the monologue I knew so well. Your mom doesn't understand me like you do. That bitch, she's no good, as he rambled on, calling her awful names. And I just listened. I was a good listener for a little boy. I would carry this skill into adulthood. He kept calling Mom names, but I didn't care. My only purpose was to calm him down so he would go back to sleep and give the family a break. I put my hand to his forehead and began stroking it. Dad, I whispered, Mom isn't trying to be mean, and you're not bad. You just get a little scary when you get mad. No one is against you, Dad, especially Mom. We just get scared, that's all. I continued to stroke his hair and face. He was definitely calming down. His beard was really rough, rubbing the side of my face. You're the only one that understands me, loves me. Not even Danny understands me like you do. Danny was my older brother. Danny loves you, Dad. Mom doesn't hate you. I kept my voice really quiet. He was becoming more and more relaxed. My apprehension began to fade away. He'd be asleep soon. I knew it. It always worked. And then my moment would come to escape. But suddenly he pulled my face up to his. You're a really good boy. You understand me. You're a really good boy. You're the only one I really love. Our faces were touching now. He was holding me like a teddy bear, and I was really uncomfortable. He began to move his lips around my face. The smell of alcohol was almost suffocating. I got many beard burns on my face on those occasions. I was confused by my feelings, curious why my body felt strange, like I was dropping down an elevator shaft. Why did it feel good and scary at the same time? I wanted to pull away, but my body was like rubber. While it felt good to have this strange control over my dad, I was weakened and powerful at the same time. Finally, he fell asleep. I quietly crawled out of the bed and tiptoed out of the room, knowing I had done my job in calming him down, at least for now. That was a ritual I got used to between the ages of 7 and 12. I was not always successful getting him to stay in that bedroom, but as the years went on, my track record as the little man became quite good. When I thought about it as an older adult, I realized that in some way on those occasions, I took my mom's role in my father's bed. These experiences weighed heavy on a young boy's mind, but were outweighed by my resolve to protect my family from this dangerous man I called my father. Nevertheless, this little boy had much confusion to unravel as he grew into a man that I know as me today. I would someday have to face the sexual overtone of these experiences with my father. He never got sexually physical with me, yet it was clear that something sexual was happening. As an adult, my mom shared with me that my dad had been impotent for most of the years of their marriage. I understand that these bedroom encounters could have been totally different if that weren't so. So I chose to think of it as divine intervention. Yeah. There you go. Claudia.
Even if this is
You
even
can-
so, did you ever get that those encounters with him, underneath it, he was really loving you? And even though it felt sexual or could have been,
Mhm.
or could have been even more, this is just what's
Yeah.
coming to
Yeah,
me.
yeah, yeah.
That
I'll answer anything.
underneath it, did you ever feel this, or is this a possibility that even underneath that
Mhm.
action was really him truly loving you?
Yeah, I actually did get that. I did get it. In a strange, I used to, beg him to love my brother because I knew another taking care of. I knew my brother needed him so badly. But I felt underneath the confusion, I still felt just like I did when the personalities were there and he came up long enough to get me out of the house. That's how I felt too when I was in bed with him, that there was a strange kind of love that surpassed. But I think it's important to realize that I don't know if I would be reading the same story if he had not been impotent, because I felt, even at that young age, that he really did love me and would have gone beyond with that love. Yeah. Yeah. Anyone else? Yeah. Thank you, guys. Yeah.
So, yeah, that's really strong wounding that took place. And I'm just wondering, I would never have known that was your background, Patrick. So I don't sense any scars. But do you feel that there still are internal scars from that?
I think that there would probably be no way that there wasn't, but I would agree with you on that. I went to my first therapist at 34, and I went to the therapist because I wanted, not because of any of this at that time, but I just thought, how in the hell did I get out of not going to a therapist after all of this? So I decided to go there. But yeah, I think I felt the wounds that you're talking about, but I didn't tell the secrets, but I always knew how to talk about my feelings. And I think that saved me. Does that make sense? Like when we would sit around and I would go, oh, I'm hurt, or I feel this, and I wasn't afraid to do that, which always surprises me because this should have shut me down. And I remember at one time, oh, it's amazing how this stuff comes out. I remember one time wanting to shut my voice down, and I thought, don't stop talking, and you will never shut down. And I've never shut up since, actually. But yeah, but you're right. But yeah, I know if people would say, how could this be with you, Patrick? It's because I think I was always gifted somehow to see the love within the madness. And I feel so, grateful. And I also went through those times too that I had to work through a lot of, hate and a lot of stuff from my mom especially, that as you get older, then you're asking the same questions. How could you, why did you? Yeah. So I would say yes. I think what's beautiful about this, I told Rita, I said, I feel that this is the last piece of armor to take off, to know that it's safe. It's safe to be vulnerable. It's safe to sit here knowing that everyone will have an opinion. It's safe to say, live stream me. Because it's safe. And it's also there'll be people, that wonder how you could do this, how you could do this to your mother. Because talk about this. There have been. I mean, people that usually get defensive are people that wouldn't have told the story themselves. And that's usually, that go against that. But guess what? The risk is worth it. That's what I was saying. Yes, Emma.
Did you, when you said that you talked this over with your friends. Did you talk about this with your mom?
When my mother was probably in her 80s, my mother and I talked a lot about things, and I believe I said, all those times in the bedroom, Mom, could have been very, very awful. And I remember talking to her about that. And I think it was one of the things my mother, before she left, was very hard for her. I'm really trying very hard as this little boy not to defend her. I don't mean that she shouldn't be defended, but I'm just saying there's still a part of me that's going, don't think bad of my mommy. Don't you dare think bad of my mommy, because they used to say that about my dad. God, your dad's a drunk. Don't you call my dad a drunk. I call him one. You don't call him. But I really think that, yeah. Good questions, though, yeah. Ask the question again. I want to hear it again.
Did you talk or discuss?
Oh, yeah. So but that was one. And then, because this is the one that I wanted out, because it's the one that I felt the most betrayed by to some degree. Because I remember one time as a little boy saying, she said something to me, or my brother said something to me, and about the family, the family's a good family. I'm thinking, Jesus. And then I said, you married him. I didn't. Because somebody said something about your behavior, I said, I'm going to do this. And I go, I didn't marry him. I didn't marry him. I remember that there was a strength in that moment when I said, I didn't marry him. You did. And we had that conversation. And then it went kind of quiet. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, Beth? You guys are going, only one more story I'm going to.
Given the persistent serious mental illness with your father, did your brother suffer from it? And did you have fears that you might get it?
And Beth, you are, you know what? I was positive I was going to get out without having to disclose this. But of course, no. There's one guarantee that I made tonight, one commitment I made to myself, one agreement I made to myself tonight, that there would be not one question not answered with truth. So here's the truth of that one. The only reason is because I'm still protecting my mama a little bit here. That's a question that a lot of people do, once they know that my father was paranoid schizophrenic. My brother was bipolar and did suffer from a lot of things. My fear might have been that way, except that I don't believe that. Because of my spiritual belief, I believe that nothing's predetermined. But in the world of form that people do, he was not my biological, I found out as well. Hello! Another coming out experience that I didn't want to do really on this thing, because who knows who's watching, but the good thing about it, they're all gone. But that was the thing I was going to, and I'm glad. I'll tell you why I'm glad it came up, because Rita and I discussed it, and we said, I wonder if I should make that a disclaimer when I first start, so that everybody's not thinking, oh dear God, I hope Patrick's not schizo, Feren. And I know you all were thinking that, going, does he know that it runs in the family? But I wasn't. I prayed, just so you'll know, on my knees to the point where they were bloody half the time. I said, please, God, give me another dad. Give me another dad. This can't possibly. I'm a prince. How in the hell did this happen? But I want to tell you just a little snippet. Thank you, Beth. Thank you for doing that, because I was the whole time I'm going, should I end with that? Should I not tell that? But I prayed and prayed and prayed. And when I heard that it was when you're 24, going to get married, called it off, and it was at the party, but there was no bride there. And my mom, and we were all partying a bit, and she said, I just need to tell you that he's not your father. And I went, does this shit get any, you can't even make this stuff up. What? And so the reason I'm saying this, I didn't care about the mental illness thing, but here's what happened. I met my biological briefly. Be careful what you wish for, and be careful what you pray for. And he's gone too, so the whole family, I got them all gone. It's just me now. But I was so grateful, I'm going to say it, grateful to have this man as my father after I met my biological. You put that piece together. And I'll tell you why. He was everything that I don't stand for, that I'm bigot, everything that you could, filled with all that. And even through the mental illness, I at least saw love at the center of this man that I grew up as my father. I knew love in the strangest, weirdest possible way you can look and spot love. But yeah, so all of you watching, not my biological. Yeah. So Beth looks relieved. She's like, woo! Yeah. Oh, that is so funny. But see, that never was a real big part. But the big part of that is begging to have another father and finding one and going, you've got to be kidding. Because I was like, had a chance. It was my like, da, 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 da. There's my mentor. There's my mentor. Oh, my God. Rita and I went to visit him. Holy mackerel. That can't be any part of no, please. And I'm going, you got a sense of humor, God. So, yeah. So, thank you. I knew that was going to come out. I just knew it. So, let's go on to the last. And it's called Freeing Moses. And this one's a very special part of this book for me because I never really processed this. I told it once to Rita, and Rita said, "Really? You gotta put this in this book." So the coping skills. Let's have water though. The coping skills I discovered and applied to survive my more than confusing childhood are ones for the mental health record books. Did I come here with these skills, or did they evolve moment to moment in the chaos? This is the question I still ponder. Although I wouldn't admit it at the time, there was this hidden me that wanted to be free from my father and my crazy family. In fact, at times I felt I must have been born into the wrong family. As frightening as my father could be, I knew I had to stay. I had to protect my mom and my brother at any cost. Could that be the reason I was sent here and the reason I didn't try to escape? When you don't have control, and I had none in my world, I believe you create it somehow, even if it's a false illusion of safety and security. It was another coping skill in the only way I can explain the following story. On hot summer days, I would often spend time at this creek near my trailer park. Oh, excuse me. My mother would correct me here. It was a mobile home park, Patrick. I loved the creek near our mobile home park and spent a lot of time there. That creek felt like a whole secret world without having to stray too far away from home. It was a hideout for many kids of all ages from the surrounding neighborhoods. I always wondered where the creek went and how far it flowed before meeting another body of water or moving out to sea. On this particular day, before I opened the gate to my secret world, I opened the nearby dumpster to throw out some garbage that I had brought with me. As I opened the lid, I saw a very dirty, naked baby doll in the dumpster. It was one of those simple rubbery baby dolls, the kind that little girls played with. I suddenly had a strange urge to save this doll. Where this urge came from, I do not know. I was 8 years old and I was a boy. I was going to forget about it and close the dumpster lid, but the desire was too strong. I looked around to make sure I wasn't being watched, and As quickly as I could, I took that forgotten baby doll out of the dumpster. A part of me knew that it was an odd thing to do, and yet I felt I was on an important mission. By now, I had forgotten all about my trip to the creek. Holding that baby doll tightly, I ran home. I arrived at an empty house. My mom must have been at work, and I have no idea where my brother and my dad were. This was the perfect opportunity to save this baby, and I took it. I immediately gave the baby a bath and wrapped it in a makeshift blanket. I rocked the baby and let him lie on my bed. "You'll be safe with me," I assured him. "You are my secret baby, and I won't tell anyone." Although my mom would have been fine with it, I had to keep the baby a secret to keep it safe from everyone else. It was my duty to take care of him. He was all clean and safe, and I was going to make sure he stayed that way. I knew I had to hide him somewhere so that my brother and my dad could not find him. I knew if they saw me with a doll that they would make fun of me and call me a sissy, as they did quite frequently anyway. I quickly made the baby a bed in a shoebox, adding some material to keep him comfortable. I put him in the back of the closet. Yes, he would be safe there. As I went back to my life, there was a sense of power to know that I had saved this baby and that only I knew about it. I was in control of his safety. After a few days, or it might have been a week, a new decision had to be made. I knew he could not remain there with me. I no longer felt he was safe, and I had to somehow let him go so he could be free of harm. I feared that he might be found and either taken away from me or made into a football by my brother. I went to Catholic school. I was familiar with the story of Moses. It was a true story with a happy ending. I decided to create a boat, wrap the baby in it, and send him down the creek to a new home of safety. It wasn't denial like Moses, but I did hope he would have the same fate. I remember so clearly the day I decided to let my baby go into the turbulent waters to freedom. I lined the makeshift shoebox and wrapped it around with plastic to keep it dry. Making my way to the creek like a secret agent, I made sure the kids who played at the creek didn't see what I was doing. What would I have told them? I truly didn't understand it myself. What I was doing seemed to go beyond make-believe. My conflicting emotions and sadness and the feeling that I was doing the right thing welled up inside of me. I decided that my special spot at the creek was the perfect place to let him go. I sat with the baby for a moment and imagined all the good things that could happen when he was found. As I finally put the boat in the water, I held on tight, not wanting to let go. The waters were flowing and seemed rougher than usual. I held that baby and soothed him. This is the best thing for you. You'll find a family or a little girl, a little boy who'll take you home just like I did. I let him know it was too dangerous to stay with me. I love you so much. That's why I have to let you go. I let go of the little boat and off it went. It got caught on some rocks a few feet down, and I ran down the creek and released it. As I watched my baby float down the rambling creek, I wondered if he'd make it to safety and not tip over and be washed away. I was a good Catholic boy, and I knew what to do. I'd pray. I'd done my part, and I knew that God would handle the rest just like Moses. Right now, as a man writing this, I feel a bit embarrassed by the experience, and I felt the urge to look up that story of Moses. In order to escape death, Moses' mother placed him in a basket when he was still a baby and set him adrift on the river Nile. She left his fate up to God's will. The infant Moses was rescued by Pharaoh's daughter and brought up in the palace as a royal prince. After reading the description of Moses, I am sure my young knowledge of the story played a role in my mission to free the baby. The question becomes, why did an 8-year-old boy go to such great lengths to allow this experience to occur in the first place? As I've already stated, as a young child, I found incredible coping mechanisms to handle my life amidst the confusion of my father's mental illness. Yes, my imagination allowed me to act out what I most likely wanted for myself. It was me I found that hot summer day trapped in a dumpster. The story parallels my out-of-control life. I felt trapped. I felt unsafe. I was saving me on some fantasy level. I was my protector. I wanted to be saved and raised a prince like Moses. That little boy created a scenario, an experience that would assist him to deal with his fear and give him some peace of mind. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. It did have one last paragraph. I now know that 8-year-old boy, that 8-year-old little boy was special, and there's nothing to be embarrassed about. I feel a sense of pride for that little boy who reached inside and found a way, although temporary, to cope with this confusing world. Yeah. Aren't you glad you came out on Thursday night? Yeah. Bob? I'm glad I came out. Nah. Any questions on that before I have one little closing thing before we... Anything on that baby? What did you think of that little boy and that baby? It made sense, yeah? Yeah, she said totally just I think back on it now, and with all my psych training and everything else, which was interesting because by the time I had the psych training, I'm thinking, boy, I already was an intern when I was really young with it. But I remember how, now I'm looking, I said, what an ingenious way to deal with. So that might be, Faith, as we were talking about it, how I dealt with my wounds as it went along. That I had some insight. And you know, when you think of it, these are not, my stories, my life is not any worse than probably some people's story, but what I'm learning is it's subjective. Because I spoke to a woman years ago in a session. She was in a session with me, and she talked about her family, and she said, I said, yeah, our dinner table, and here's the other thing, every night we had our dinner at 5:30. I mean, we did, no matter what he was. My mother still kept that world the best she could, even if my dad's face was laying in the potatoes. It didn't matter, we still conversed with it. And I would tell her that, and she said, my family never raised their voice. My family, how was school? How was this? How was that? And she said, a part of me, as weird as it feels, is so jealous of some of your experiences because at least they were, alive and not, set into a little box. So this isn't the ending of the book, this is what I'm going to tell you, but I want to tell you a little closure I had with my father. My whole life was spent, as I said, with one eye, my young life was spent with my one eye open and ready for anything. Even in acting, I remember they said, you have a tick. Do you notice in your that you're always doing, like that? And I would be doing scenes, and they said, you kind of look like a bird. And I would go, lovely self-esteem booster, as my acting coach was. But I got what he was saying because you're always ready to see what's happening. And it also, most of these coping mechanisms too have served me now as an adult. On Sundays, I see you all. I can feel it, I can see it, and I think it helps to have that connection, unless you're picking up and sensing something that isn't the best in the world with you. But when my dad, I last saw him, he died in 94. My brother passed away in 93. And two very, very interesting things that I'd like to share with it. My brother, who got hit by a car in San Francisco, he was 42. He had called my mother and said, and he ended up next door in the same VA, in the same mental ward. They were both there. And I remember him calling, my mom said he called and said, I can't end up with my father. I mean, he wanted to be with him so badly that look where they ended up in that. And he did get out that night and he got hit by a car. And but the story is how interesting that he wanted to be so close to him. So the finale with my father, because I was hypervigilant, was that I went to visit him. I lived in Los Angeles, and I went to visit him with my mom. And I still had the same thing. How you doing, Papa? How you doing, Papa? How you doing? I was still doing that at 30 years old, rubbing his face and saying, how you doing, Papa? And I remember I reached down at this one time and I gave him a kiss, how you doing, Bob? And he said, men don't do that, men don't do that. So I think my father had other torturous things that were going on. So I went and I touched his face and he went, good! And I went all the way back to a 7-year-old boy. The same and I just froze. And here I am, just like this, looking at him, my mom sitting there. And I said to him, you will never, ever, ever scare me again. I'm done. And I turned around and walked down that long hall, and I never looked back. And my mom came to the car and she said, are you all right? And I said, I'm free. There was something so powerful for that little boy man to say, you will never, ever scare me again. And so whether or not that's the end of the book, who knows? But that is an ending that I wanted to give for tonight because I thought it was important to know that I took that moment to say, you're not going to scare me again. And I did that for that little boy that lives inside of me to say, you know what? I got you. That's why my inner child work is so important to me, to work with. It's not about the stories. And then it's all about a story. But it's not about that. It's what we do with our stories. And so no matter what our lives have been, we have an opportunity. And that's what I'm about. Mine is the resilience that says, yeah, it wasn't easy, and I wouldn't suggest doing it, going through it, but we all have our stories. And we're all going through whatever it is, and we're all together in this. And as long as I always say, as long as we think that there's a dirty laundry being up there, then we will live in shame. And I have not, and tonight I just want to make it clear, tonight was never about, for me, I can't wait to blame them. I can't wait to let them pay for what they did to me. And I haven't even mentioned the word forgiveness, have I? Because there's an arrogance in forgiveness sometimes, like I have to forgive them. No, I just have to let my little boy, my little self understand. That's it. Because when I understand and forgive myself and forgive it, then it's fine. And that there is a power that nurtures us no matter what that is there for us. And we all have our own process. And so, yeah. Any parting remarks before I close this out, Laurel?
It's first, thank you. This being raised a Catholic and now being what I call an un-Catholic, because you're never a non-Catholic, I realized, have a greater appreciation for the Catholic Church after hearing your story. Because I realized, as my devoutness as a child, the foundation that lays for the rest of one's life as that higher power, that belief in God, and the belief that all is well, and that it's wonderful. There's a lot about the Catholic Church that was terrible.
Well, yeah, and we're not denying any of those.
Right.
But what I was allowed to believe in, I didn't believe in the God that didn't like me, because I knew I couldn't get to him anyway, because I had a million saints I had to go through to get to that. But what I did realize, and I say this from the deep inside the well of my heart, I learned about the invisible. I learned the invisible. Because I was always praying to St. Teresa or somebody to come and I said, there was an invisible thing, and then I just transferred it over later on when we did that.
Yeah, and all those saints, they're a big help.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I had wondered,
You know she's coming.
when you did the You'll Never Scare Me
Oh, yeah.
Again, had you already been doing inner child work to even realize that that's how you served?
I don't think
that
I
boy?
knew it in that way.
You hadn't yet.
I knew,
Formally.
I knew about inner child work, but not the way that I know about it now, because it's a way to allow that inner child to come forth and have its word. But I did know that there came a time when there was a part of me that I knew was the little child, that I knew was the time that I had to stand up and protect him, and that this was it, no matter what. Finale. Enough is enough. And I remember, and still goosebump, still like that. And I still thought, when I turned around, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. And I'm thinking, by who? By who? By who? Any finales? Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah, I have an experience sitting here tonight listening to you, Patrick, and what I'm struck by, and I have no idea if it was true, of all the other moments in your childhood, but what you've shared with us tonight, what I feel sitting with you, is I'm kind of awed, frankly, by the consistent choice you made. No matter what you were feeling, if it was terror, if it was a desire to protect, there was a consistent choice to witness the truth of what you were feeling. A part of you was always telling yourself the truth about what you were feeling. You didn't deny, shut down, repress, which is what causes splitting and and disease. You stayed in the truth of what you were feeling, and then the courage of the little boy to take some action in the face of the truth of what you're feeling, which is why you're so healthy. That's what I'm feeling sitting here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right on. And on that note, thank you, because what kept coming up, I wanted to acknowledge. I didn't know if I was going to put it in a question or acknowledge Patrick. You're so well equipped. So I'm thinking he's an old soul, for exactly what you just, thank you, shared. I'm ditto. I'm thinking so well equipped, that age, that exactly what the lady said, consistent, well equipped, and in tune, tapped in, whatever, old soul, you just special. Thank God, I'm so happy for you. You had that. Another one would be what you suggested.
My brother to be one.
Yeah.
My brother, when someone said, how could somebody, and it was interesting, I want to say one thing about it, then I'll close this out. One thing that was interesting is through this process, and it continues to be, I told Rita, I said, where was my brother? I know where my mother, and I knew it, but I already knew my brother, didn't really like me anyway. I mean, it was that, I came 7 years later and popped in and said, hi, I'm here, and ruined everything, But I don't remember, I think one of the questions that was new for me even is, why weren't you doing this? You were the older brother, 7 years older. Could have been my, that's that little boy that you could have been my mentor. You could have been, but there was a vacancy there with him as well, and I can understand it now. But the question always comes: why does one person go this way and another person go that way? And that's what makes us incredibly unique, and not one better than the other. That's the beauty of it. Not one better than the other, and that's what I love about why it's taken me so long to allow this to come to life, is because I didn't want it to be, let me tell you how horrible my life was. Because I'll be the first to tell you, it was very, very scary. But there's something else here to be known. And I think we felt that through this. And I'm just knowing that as the stories come and the discoveries come, that it won't be just, it'll be resiliency. And I want the last chapters to be on how do we work it now in our lives? How do we take all the stuff that we considered, kind of a curse on us, and how do we take it and love it and forgive it and sometimes, step all over it. It's okay. Because life can get really ugly. And I see myself right now as we're speaking, that how beautiful my thing that I cursed, how beautiful it was to have that. So thank you. That really, really solidified, aligned. Yes, 2 more, and then I will promise to close you out.
No wonder, dearest Patrick, that you have created this space for us in which to learn and grow and prosper and be happy, because you are magnificent. Always have been and always will be.
Oh, mahalo. Mahalo, Faith. Oh.
So actually, at the beginning of your talk, Patrick, you mentioned just kind of in passing that you are a prince. And then towards the end, when you spoke about Moses going down the river, and he was brought into the palace and became a prince, and that your transformed new creation that you are is a prince. And I love that. I think that's awesome, and I totally resonate with that. But I just am wondering more specifically what that means to you.
I feel a little bit like Siddhartha, who had this incredible prince life. And in order to discover, I had to play in another field. Because I always felt like I was a prince. And I don't know why, I couldn't understand why no one knew that. But it felt like the Siddhartha story where he wanted to know what it was like out there. And you know what a prince means to me as a prince? Why I like being a prince instead of a king? Because a prince is always discovering, always learning to someday be king. And that's what I think that I've always felt, that someday to be king, but what I love being is the prince, because the prince will therefore always learn and always grow and always be able to hang with people. And I've always been that way, even in high school, all through. I looked and searched so much for the underdog, because I think a part of me felt that they would be ignored, that they would be forgotten, that they would be in the dumpster. And I think there was a part of me that really felt that on some subliminal level. Quite an evening. So let's close this out with a beautiful, beautiful treatment, shall we? First of all, Brene Brown, since she did a Joe Dispenza quote at the beginning, but Brene Brown talks about, I'll paraphrase, vulnerability is a very interesting thing, and you have to be very careful who you open it up to sometimes. And so I want to thank you personally, and thank you all the people I know. I know Michelle and Ron are watching, and Sherry and Tom. I know a bunch of people are watching. But I want to thank you for trusting me, for letting me share this part of my vulnerability. Because one of the things that you lose sometimes on these journeys is trust. And I am so, so trusting of everyone that's in this room, everyone that is watching. And so with that, let's know this. Oh, close your eyes if it feels good, and keep them wide open. It really doesn't matter. I'll probably do both. So what I know that something wonderful has occurred, something magnificent has occurred, that Spirit has made itself known through me, as me, through each and every person here, through each and every person that has been watching through live stream, that there is a evolution, revolution that has taken place tonight for each and every one of us. And I know that there is something that is moving through and is on our side in every moment, no matter what. And I bless each and every one of our individual little lives called the inner child, call it the inner you. It doesn't matter. It just needs recognition. And I recognize it, and I embody it, and I just trust it. So I am so filled with gratitude for my life, for each and every one of us that have come here tonight to share in that consciousness. And I just know from this moment to the next moment to the next moment that it is filled with love, it is filled with trust, it is filled with that God stuff that allows us to be exactly who we are in every moment. Thank you. Thank you, Spirit. Thank you, life. Thank you, everyone in this room. Thank you. Thank you. Thank us. Thank it all. I am so filled with gratitude right now that it's overflowing like a fountain. And with that, I simply know it is the truth. I let it go to that law of my being that always says yes, has always been saying yes. And I just let it be, as together we say. And so it is. So I'm sitting here like this because you know our rules of the